Hello and welcome to Filmi Ladies. We're Pitu and Beth, and today we have an esteemed guest of honor. And that esteemed guest is Amrita, whom you may know from the Khandaan podcast. And if you don't, you should check it out immediately and experience the awesomeness that is Amrita. The reason we have her on as a guest today is because we're doing a very special episode, and it is on the one, the only, the truly iconic Sridevi. Now, unless y'all are living under a boulder, which I know you're not, Sridevi is arguably the biggest Indian female superstar. And those of you who disagree can fight with me on this. She did something like 300 movies in 5 languages. She started working when she was a child star. Her career spanned 50 years, which is older than each of our ages. So this is a woman not to be messed with. And for this episode, we each picked a movie to talk about. I chose Mr. India. Amrita chose Chandni, and Beth chose, Beth being Beth, chose Justice Chaudhary and Jaani Dost.
Which together maybe add up to one movie. I don't know.
Possibly. In content for sure, but quality, I don't know. So I'm gonna kick this off by asking Amrita, why did you pick Chandni and what do you like about Shri in it?
So Chandni is the quintessential Sridevi film in Hindi. Anytime you want to talk about Sridevi in Hindi cinema, this is the movie that first comes to everybody's lips. I know you and I had the exact same experience where you were like, what movie do you want to talk about? And I was like, Chandni? And you were like, yes, of course.
Right.
So it's really funny because Chandni as a character and as a character concept is something that was very near and dear to Yash Chopra's heart. And you kind of see it in his cinema through the decades, right? Like the woman in the white chiffon, sort of draped in mist, in the valleys of Kashmir. That's a very Yash Chopra image. But when you think about it, you don't really think about Rekha or even Sharmila Tagore or any of the great Yash Chopra heroines. You always think about Sridevi because she had that quality. You were saying in your intro that she was the biggest female superstar that India has ever seen. I would even argue that she was the biggest superstar period that India has ever seen, because the kind of work that she put out, the felicity with which she moved between languages. I don't think we've seen anybody, male or female, be able to replicate that before or even after her. And the only reason her career was cut short was because of a tragic death. I am completely convinced that if she had lived, she would right now be working in multiple languages, same as she was in her heyday. So for me, like, it was a no-brainer to talk about Chandni because that's the image of Sridevi in Hindi cinema.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Beth? Do you want to tell us why you chose the movies you did?
Well, I wanted to talk about something I hadn't already seen. And I feel like even though I'm relatively new to Sridevi, I feel like I've seen most of the heavy hitters for her. Every time I ask people what their favorites for her are, I've seen them already. And I wanted to, and because she did 16 movies with Jitendra, I felt like it had to be represented at least nominally in this discussion. And I polled Twitter, as I want to do. I'm like, if a person is going to watch one Sridevi Jitendra film, which should it be? And a lot of people said, do you have to?
Yeah.
And I figured I did have to. So I went with, I don't remember actually how I wound up at Jaani Dost, but I did actually go and search specifically blogger to see what our friends from back in the blogging days had to say. Because I'm like, surely someone ranked the Sridevi Jitendra films.
Right.
And I knew that we had done a Sridevi Palooza way back in the day.
Yeah.
And sure enough, two different people had written about Jaani Dost. One saying, ugh, and the other saying, oh God, I love this movie so much when I was a kid, and I love it still. And that was our friend Amalu, who's a huge Sridevi fan. She is the inventor of the phrase disco apsara to describe certain outfits worn by film heroines. And so I chose Jaani Dost, so I could find it with subtitles. Uh, it's not as much of a Sridevi film as I was hoping it would be. And then I watched Justice Chowdhury because I've always been curious what that film was about, uh, other than just the name. And that she barely registers in that, so that was definitely a bad choice on my part. But I didn't know, and I've seen it. Now I know. But yeah, I wanted to see one of these kind of, would you call these pot boilers? I guess
Yeah, for
sort
sure.
of, and obviously they kind of fall into this Jitendra formula thing that he was doing, and it was interesting how many of the same people are across them. There's Kader Khan, there's Shakti Kapoor, there's um so I wanted to represent that and just talk even a little bit about what a diamond she is in the most incredible muck. And I'm sure these are not even the worst of them, right? These are ones that even I had heard of, so they can't be that that far down the list, but yeah.
Nice. They used to show these N.T. Ramarao produced movies that had Sridevi, Jitendra, and Jayaprada, and they were basically indistinguishable from each other because they would always be playing on TV for some reason. They'd be like on Sun TV or Surya TV or Z TV, like one of the whatever channels, and it was always the same thing. It was always Sridevi and Jayaprada fighting over Jitendra, and I never understood that. I was like, I understand the two of you having a cat fight over someone, but why Jitendra?
Well, and then there were other ones that had, like there's one with both of them, and Rajesh Khanna is also in it, and I was like,
I
Yes.
also would not fight over
I
him
don't,
either.
I
So
don't,
Oh,
that I couldn't make that add up in my head. And, as
that, have you seen that movie?
I watched a song and that was all I could handle.
That is one of the worst, creepiest movies that I have ever seen in my life because Sridevi plays his maid in that film, and then
oh.
Jayaprada is his wife, and then his wife goes away for something, and he has an affair with Sridevi, and then it's just like this. I don't remember what the resolution of that movie was, but I was like, I don't really think you're having an affair with a woman who's like, defenseless and alone in your house and is
Works for
dependent on
you.
you for,
Yeah.
her means of support. I was just like, ugh, like it's so 80s in just the worst way.
I mean,
Yeah.
the other thing about the Jitendra films for me with her is that I think in thinking about why they are paired so often, it kind of leads to a little bit about what she's like as a star. So
Mm.
hopefully I can offer something in that regard. But like these movies do not really need to be discussed as their own thing.
Yeah.
As part of
I
her
will say
text, sure. But like,
right. But I appreciate you taking one for the team. That is true dedication. I appreciate you, Beth.
I mean, it's the
Um,
least I can do to serve this goddess,
yes. My suggestion to Beth actually was to watch Tohfa because my first reaction was also, ugh, must you? But then after that, I was like, okay, why don't you do Tohfa? Because Tohfa has some good songs. And when we were little, my
Mm.
cousins and I would sing Tohfa, 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 Laya, Laya, Laya,
I
as
like.
one does. So I just wanted Beth to be able to watch that and sing along with me. But maybe we'll watch Tohfa together sometime, do
Yeah.
like a little watch along.
Well, and
So the
I
movie,
was telling Pitu I rejected that because it was a love triangle, and I knew with Chandni in the mix, I was like, that one is enough.
she'd had enough love triangles. The movie I picked was Mr. India because I think that's actually my favorite Sridevi movie. I mean, I do like Chandani a lot and I also like Lamhe. But the thing about both of those films is they're both very dramatic. And I like the sheer fun and campiness of Mr. India. And to me, even though the movie is called Mr. India and Mr. India and this movie is
Mhm,
Anil Kapoor. And of course,
mhm.
Amrish Puri rules the roost as Mogambo. It's actually a Sridevi movie to me. Like I watch it for her. I'm not watching it for Anil Kapoor's disappearing act, and I'm watching it for Hawa Hawaii, and I'm watching it for Kaate Nahi Karte Hain Din Ye Raat, and all of that stuff. That's what I'm really watching. Or Karte Hain Hum Pyar, Mr. India say, and like her intrepid reporter thing with Anu Kapoor. It's just she. I think is probably the finest comic actor we ever had. Um,
Yes.
because there's also Madhubala who's very funny and Juhi Chawla as well, but Sridevi still rules the roost. And one thing that really struck me this time when I watched the Hava Hawaii song, she is everything all at once in a way that I don't understand. Like, she's very funny in that song, but she's also incredibly sexy. She's also very glamorous, and she's also very cute, but she's also in a weird way approachable and kind of like girl next doorish. And I don't understand how one person can encapsulate all those five adjectives at the same time. And I don't think anyone else could do that. Most people will pick like two things and they'll do that. So it really like drove me crazy. Also, she rocks a glittery sequin outfit. So there's that, as Beth's wallpaper will show us. um are either of you guys familiar with her non-Hindi stuff?
Um, yes, a little bit. So I've seen obviously I've seen Shanam Shanam, which is the original of what Ramu later remade as Dodd in Hindi.
Love Dodd.
Yeah. So the Telugu one is with Chiranjeevi and Sridevi, and that's the movie in which like he made his bones basically. And it's a classic in Telugu cinema, and like everybody knows that movie in the Telugu cinema world, or in like South India, like everybody knows that.
Really good music too.
Yes. Um, I can't remember if that's the film in which you have the original of Thak Thak. So the tune for Thak Thak, which is Madhuri and Anil Kapoor's film from Beta, a song from Beta. The tune from that is actually from a Sridevi film in Telugu, and I cannot remember now off the top of my head if that was from Shanam Shanam. And then, of course, I've seen her with Kamal Hassan in Tamil, but I can't remember the names of those movies. And I think the last non-Hindi film that I saw her in was actually an Arvind Swamy Sridevi film in Malayalam, in which she plays like this unwed mother or like an abandoned woman or something like that. Like it was just supposed to be this tragedy. I think it actually did work a lot in Malayalam, but obviously the emphasis was on look at Sridevi, isn't she beautiful? Let's just put her in a wet sari as much as possible. These were the dark years of Malayalam cinema. It's not the Malayalam cinema that we have today. So that's what I really remember. But like you said, Pitu, the thing that set Shri apart from everybody else was her ability to be like multiple things on screen, and that mix of cute, funny, and sexy in, especially. I don't think anybody has come close to that, definitely nobody from the present generation. It's just this weird thing where she'll just have these expressions while she's dancing, that especially when she's dancing, and you just can't stop like looking at her. Like you can't take your eyes off her. She just eats up the screen. It's fabulous. And it's definitely, you can see that in her early Tamil work. You can see that in her Telugu work. I don't know if we can see that in her Malayalam work, because what I remember of that Malayalam movie, and that's the only Malayalam movie that I've seen her in, but I'm sure she's done like multiple movies in Malayalam as well. I think she and Kamal Hassan were in like a few of the early Malayalam movies, but I haven't seen those, no.
Yeah, you can see that Quicksilver sort of expressions on her face, even in a movie like Chalbaz, where when you see her as Anju and Manju, like especially the funny one, I think that's Manju. And
No, yeah.
the funny one is Manju, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And she's like drunk and she's having fun and she doesn't want to pay her landlord his money and she's doing all sorts of shenanigans and you just can't take your eyes off of her and she just eats up the screen. Or even in songs like that song from Chalbaz with Rohini Hattangadi and Anupam Kher.
Yes.
Gadbad
The
ho gayi,
Gadbad,
Siti baj gayi. It's the most
uh-huh.
bizarre song I've seen ever. Like it's so zany and hilarious, and it's the same thing. You can't look away from her. So, where, what I mean, I know we've said that that was kind of what set her apart from everyone else. Why do you think, though, that she is just considered like India's greatest female superstar and not superstar, period? Because I think, you'd have all of your Amitabh Bachchan fans and your Shah Rukh Khan fans, such as ourselves, come out of the woodwork and be like, because I agree with you. I think she tops all of them. But why do you think, is the answer just like plain old sexism?
Yes. Yes. Sometimes the most simple, obvious answer is the actual answer.
Sexism is the Occam's razor of all questions asked on this podcast.
Right.
Yes. Unfortunately, I think I think male fandoms in particular, and you'll see this dynamic at work even for present day female superstars. You will see that, male fandoms are half, oh my God, this guy is really great. And the other half is, well, all these other people ain't shit. And the other half of it, like, that part of it really also applies to women, because anytime you'll see this with like Shah Rukh and Deepika, for example, or with Katrina and whoever you want to like talk about. But somebody or Katrina and Akshay, sorry, like not whoever, but like Katrina and Akshay, who are also like a very successful pair. You'll see a lot of people talk about like, oh, well, the only reason and you can plug in whoever you want for that but the only reason that she is so successful is because he was with her. He is the one who brings in the crowds. He is the one that people want to see, and then she is just there for the ride. And as you can see with somebody like Sridevi, that's not true. Like, Anil Kapoor was at the top of his game when he made this film. Anil Kapoor was the top of his game when he was making those movies with Madhuri for that reason, like when he was making Beta, for example. But I remember even when something like Raja came out with Madhuri and
Sanjay
Sanjay
Kapoor.
Kapoor. Who on earth wanted to watch Sanjay Kapoor? Like, I don't think even his own family wanted to watch Sanjay Kapoor. But I remember the discourse at that time, and I was very young, but I still remember like it filtering through to me that a lot of people thought that Raja was a hit because of Sanjay Kapoor. And I was like, friend, like I don't really think that's true.
Right.
Even as a child, I was like, is that true? I don't think so.
I don't think even
Uh,
Sanjay Kapoor thinks that's true.
No. But that's how deep the misogyny runs, and that's how
Right.
deep the sexism runs. And yeah, I think that's why. But now that Sridevi has passed away, it's safe for a lot more people to be like, oh, like she was a great superstar. But then they'll always throw in a little thing at the end. She was the only great female superstar,
Right.
she was the only one that could do it. So they're going to give her roses, but also make sure that they're going to slam that door shut for all the other women that come after her.
Right. That's true.
Mm.
So tell me a little bit more about Chandni. What do you think do you think that she eats up Rishi and Vinod Khanna? Not a very difficult thing to do, to eat those two up. What do you think about her in that film? I know she lights up the screen, but what else about it? Why do you think she was the quintessential Yash Chopra heroine and embodied that moonlight starstruck thing that he was all about?
What I really like about this movie is that Chandni has a job, you know?
Yeah.
Like, she's obviously a being of celestial beauty, blah, blah, blah. She's airy, she's fun, she's blah, blah. But she also has a job, and she refuses to be taken advantage of at that job. There's a point where she thinks that Vinod Khanna is trying to make her act like an escort or something to his business friends, and she's just like, nope, I'm not gonna do that. And she's like, I have boundaries.
Yeah.
Welcome. And
That's the scene where Vinod Khanna is like so middle class. ये मिडिल क्लास लोगों की प्रॉब्लम्स.
But and also another thing that she has is that she has friends who are like
Mm.
relatable people, like the whole like Anant Mahadevan and Meeta
Mita.
Vatsish couple. I mean, they're like actual people. They're married. They have issues with the place that they live in. They are supportive friends. They, give her good life advice, which she eventually discards. But they're looking out for her. They're hanging out. They're doing things that friends in Hindi cinema or Indian cinema in general don't really do, especially in a movie that is all about the love triangle. And it's not labored in any way.
Mhm.
And I love that. Like this movie is, I know people get really mad about the Rishi character. I get mad as well. And people get really mad that she goes back to him at the end of the movie, which again, valid. I also feel that way. Chandni clearly deserves better than to marry that guy and his family.
Mm.
Um, but even with all of that, like this movie is so well made, and this is what sets Yash Chopra apart from a lot of people who claim to be like Yash Chopra. I think people confuse aesthetics for talent,
Mm.
and Yash Chopra
What
obviously.
in 2024?
I think a lot of people invest in, the Yash Chopra look, but they don't
Mm.
really spend that much time thinking about why exactly his films are so not just watchable, but rewatchable. Um, like Chandni, even if you fast forward through all the stuff with, Rishi and even Vinod Khanna, um, you still have quite a few things that you can watch and like enjoy.
Mhm.
That entire sequence of Chandni in Bombay, like once she, when she like exits the whole Rishi Kapoor thing, um, it's fabulous. Like she's a modern woman, she's got a job, she's paying rent, she's out having fun with her friends. I love it. I just really
Mm.
enjoy it. And I love the fact that she was able to play that character, and she played it with such elan, like it
Mhm.
wasn't it wasn't it wasn't self-conscious at all. It's a very natural performance, which is the hallmark of a Sridevi performance.
Mhm.
Like it just feels like she's actually that character that she is playing, be it so however ridiculous that you want to make it. Like I'm sure Beth has like tons to say about Justice Chaudhary and Jaani Dost. But even then, like she's always like the best thing in projects like that because
Mhm.
she's somehow able to portray truth in some way.
Mhm.
Yeah. So.
I like the thing you said about Yash Chopra because I've always felt like one of the things I notice whenever I see a Yash Chopra movie is that everyone in it is a grown up. And I
Yeah.
don't mean that they're just a grown up chronologically, but they actually behave like grown ups. They
Mm.
have a life, they make decisions. Sometimes those decisions are terrible and they go up in flames, but then there's consequences and they have to deal with those consequences. And I would say in most of the Yash Chopra films I've seen, barring a few like Parampara or whatever, in most of his films, the woman does have like an actual character and an identity, and there's like character development happening where you know that this person is different. Like Chandani is different from, Rakhi's character from Kabhi Kabhi is different from Wahida Rahman in Kabhi Kabhi is different from, his other characters. So I love because apart from Chandni, I feel like a lot of the Sridevi movies I've seen, they sort of tried to just capitalize on her sort of impish, girlish charm
Hmm.
and not so much sort of the modern woman. I mean, in Mr. India also, she has a job. She's, as I mentioned, the intrepid reporter, and she's truly intrepid. She's going to Mugambo's lair. She's dressing like one of his like henchwomen and whatnot, and she's doing all sorts of crazy things. She's getting into disguise and doing cabaret numbers as one does. I'm sure journalists do that all the time. Um, but there's just so much comedy happening that it's very hard to imagine Seema as like a real person. As much as Sridevi tries really hard, but there's just such an element of like fantasy and like zaniness happening, and that could also be the genre of Mr. India. But it's so rare to see a Sridevi film where she's 100% woman in a choice that the director made and that the writer made. And I think that's also one of the reasons that Chandni has like sort of stood the test of time. Beth, what do you think about Chandni?
I have a hard time with this movie because I hate the men in it so much. She's lovely to watch, but you know, I don't, what you were saying about, you know, the people in it are adults. I'm not sure. I think Rishi Kapoor is an adult in this movie, that character. He's such a spoiled baby.
Yeah, but some adults are spoiled babies. They're
Yeah, I guess.
entitled. And,
I
like he comes from
guess.
this privileged family where he
Yeah,
gets what
it's
he wants. He's kind
just,
of the prince, you
yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah. That I just find this and Lumhey, I find them both very hard to watch because of the men.
Yeah.
And I've actually only managed Lumhey the once. Because hitting Sridevi is not a thing I'm willing to rewatch, I guess. Like I can't. But you know, seeing Chandni again for this was, you know, she's spectacular. But to bring our friend from Australia, Temple, the blogger from Cinema Chat, or one of the bloggers from that site, you know, she talks about poor Sridevi because of all these men that she's saddled with across her career. Now I should say I've only seen two of her non-Hindi films, so I'm speaking primarily of the Hindi films, but she is so seldom paired with anyone who is worthy of her, either as a character or as a performer. So, you know, now across these almost 300 films, it's got to be true some of the time, but so like Kamal Hassan or Amitabh Bachchan, for example. But I kind of think that's why her movies with Jitendra kept happening, was because uh he he was never gonna worry about being threatened by her because he knew she was so much more of a presence than he was, right? I think there's a reason she has a few films with Amitabh, for example. I kind of suspect she threatened him, is my
Yeah, for
guess, you
sure.
know? So, but anyway, so for Chandni, like I just, you know, I want so much better for the character and for this performer to be opposite. Because I like both Rishi and Vinod a lot, but I don't think this film is their best work at all.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me to watch her have to do this.
Have to deal with them.
Yeah, yeah. And she's
So
good at portraying the love that she has for Rishi in particular, right? Like I'm convinced, but I'm annoyed.
right. I will say though that I'm a sap, and the scene where Rishi is in the wheelchair and then he realizes how much he misses her, and then that creepy room where he has her photos everywhere. Which, let's face it, as a very vain teenager, I wanted someone to do that for me. It's only as I grew older and grew a brain that I realized it was creepy. But at that time, I very much wanted a boyfriend who would plaster my photos all over his room. So that scene where Rishi like gets up and then he starts like rubbing all the things off of it like look at her. I love that scene for Rishi's acting, and my heart breaks for him. And it's like, I know you're a spoiled brat and you're privileged and you live with this bubble and your family is horrible, and our Sridevi Chandni deserves so much better than you, but in that scene I feel bad for him. So perhaps I am also all about making bad decisions.
I mean, this is a
It
movie that
just
makes me agree with Anupam Kher. Like, what? What
Oh,
is
he's
going
actually a
on?
good green flag
He's
person
a
in that
yeah,
movie.
he's a good figure in that
He's a
movie.
green
I
flag, and so is Wahida Rahman. I mean, I know
Yes.
she's not man, but she's a
yeah.
green flag person also.
I
Go ahead,
think
Amrita.
that particular scene where he is rubbing the white stuff off. What is
Yeah.
that, by the way? Is it paint?
I don't
I
know.
mean, because it comes off of printed photos beautifully and
It must
doesn't
be
Yeah.
mar
like
the photo. So
whitewash.
it's
I
Like,
don't know
they
what
use
that is.
lime in India. It's called tuna. I feel like it's that, but he's so rich. Why does he have tuna in his house?
well, why and how does it come off the photos without damaging them? But
If
anyway.
we ever did a seance, I would ask the ghost of Yash Chopra why a rich man has tuna.
I mean, you could just ask Aditya Chopra. I'm sure like he knows, but then you'd
True.
probably have to do a seance to like get in touch
Get
with
to
him
yeah.
anyway. Yeah. But Yeah, I think that particular scene is so enjoyable, not because of Rishi's acting, but because it's constructed to be enjoyable. It is the remorse of a man who has wronged a woman in his life,
Yeah.
like that's what the emotion is in that scene. And that is particularly engineered for women, I think, because like
Mm.
there's like so many women who feel like, they're done, they're wronged by the men in their life, but they don't really get to see any kind of remorse from those men. And I think that was one of the reasons why Chandni became such a big hit, especially for women, is because they suddenly saw this point where Rishi in the second half of the film is just consumed by remorse and he would do anything to get her back. Whether he deserves it or not is like a whole other question, but he does display a lot of remorse. And I
Yeah.
think that is very effective. And also, before we move on, I just want to point out that I misspoke earlier, and Shana Shanam is actually, it stars Venkatesh, not Chiranjeevi. So Telugu people, don't come for me. This is very early in the morning, and I'm not even sure what time it is right now. So please don't come for me.
I
So
will say about Chandni that I think that the construction that you bring up is important, and maybe never has a second half of a film been so much more satisfying to me than the first half of a film. Because the way the crescendos and everything are so beautifully crafted, even though I don't agree, so to speak,
I was very fascinated with the montage in Switzerland of like the physiotherapy and everything. Only a Yash Chopra movie could have a physiotherapy sequence that was like very glamorous. Like everyone in that, it looked more like a spa than like a hospital or something, and everything was very glamorous with the
I
physiotherapy.
felt like the Swiss staff, I was like, which hippies are those that you dragged out of some cafe? Like they look so shaggy. But then maybe in 1980, whatever, that's what Swiss medical faculty or staff look like. I don't know. But I just was like, "Hmm, I've never been to Switzerland. I don't know."
So, question for you guys then, because you raised an interesting point, Beth. What movie can you think of where you feel like she was paired with someone who is of her caliber? Either the performer was of her caliber or the character was someone that you were like, yes, this is a good choice. You deserve Sridevi. You'll do.
I have an answer ready for that one, and you're going to be
Ooh.
surprised by it. I'm sure there's more than one, but this is the one I keep thinking about is Chalbaz,
Oh.
because I think that Rajni and Sunny are both very good in that film for their respectives,
Mhm.
Sridevi's, and Sunny in particular. Like, I just think Sunny and Manju are a treasure. And like, if I had to pick a very
Yeah.
favorite Sridevi song, it's the one from that, In the Rain, with
Tera bimar mera dil.
in the rain with the clear
And
umbrella and the
Yeah.
yeah. Is that what, that's not what
yeah,
that's called, is it?
yeah,
Is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um,
I mean, I
That's
don't
what it's
think that's
called.
what it's called, but that's like the first line of the song.
Okay. Um, and I just think,
किसी के हाथ किसी के
हाँ,
हाथ
yeah,
किसी के
yeah,
हाथ
yeah.
ना
They're
आएगी.
so funny together, but funny in a way that just is believable to me. And why I find that believable, and I can't buy Rishi and her day, like it's just one of those things. It just lands differently for me for whatever reason. But I just think they are a treat together, and that
I
it's so
think it's
cute.
also because they're both so easy. I mean, as we all know, I can talk about Sunny Deol all day long, and I will try not to. But they're both so easy and just like effortless. And so is
Yeah,
Rajni. I love his
yeah,
scenes with the bottle, and then the scene
yeah.
where she pours the alcohol down the sink and she calls it gaslit.
There's such lightness in those three. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously poor Anju doesn't get that, but the sort of, I don't want to say froth, because I know we use that word dismissively sometimes. There's nothing, I'm not, I just think that that film is so, again, so beautifully constructed and performed
It's
by
like
everyone.
ebullient.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things she has in that I think it just an absolute limitless supply of, it seems. It might be one of the things that bumps her above everybody else in
Mhm.
some of these ways we were discussing.
What about you, Amrita?
I can't really think of anything offhand, to be honest. I guess if you look at Mr. India as an ensemble, then yeah, sure. Like that, everybody fits into their part really well. And they all do their best to carry the film. So I guess, yeah. But like
And
in
Arun
terms of,
Verma is a nice person. I like him.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
out to save the world.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
I was actually surprised because I thought, Beth, you were going to say Khuda Gawah.
I mean, I do think that they work pretty well together in that film, honestly. And I thought about rewatching it for this. And I was like, no, try something else.
Yeah.
Watch Jitendra instead of Amitabh. Like, oh. But
I was going to say that, if you don't like Sridevi being hit, then maybe the Sridevi Jitendra movies aren't for you because she
I'm
does
sure it's
get
coming
hit quite a bit.
Yeah, I don't think either of these films had it, or I was looking away when they did. But yeah, no, I'm sure that's there. Yeah, and it doesn't just happen to her either. We know that. So
Yeah.
I mean, I told somebody once that there's a film where Dilip Kumar hits Madhubala, and they didn't believe me, and I had to pull up the video and show them. And I was like, yeah, he does. I mean, this role does that.
Why would they not believe you?
Because they don't want to. They don't want to believe it. I get it. I get that.
Dilip Kumar also slap Suchitra Sen in the Devdas movie, or did he slap Vajantimala in Devdas?
Probably. I don't remember.
He slapped one of them in Devdas.
Nobody slaps Suchitra Sen and gets away with it.
It's Suchitra Sen. It's Suchitra Sen, because that's the scene where Devdas finds out that she's getting married. And he slaps her,
because that's what you do when you realize your girlfriend does not want to deal with your toxicity anymore. You slap her.
And then you die and you deserve it.
Yeah.
I would love for listeners to comment a role that they feel like Sridevi has been supported and matched as a character and as a performer, preferably at the same time. But somewhere out there in the 286 films or whatever, it's got to happen. But they're not very, in the ones I've seen, pretty rare.
I feel like I mean I've seen only one non-Hindi movie of hers, and that's the original of Sadma.
Same.
I forget what it's called. But in that one, I felt like her and Kamal Hassan were matched up really well.
Performance-wise, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that movie is very hella depressing. And so I've only seen it the one time and would not watch it again, but
Yeah. Because it's not Jitendra. Who is someone I have enjoyed in other things, but it's not, this is not it. But clearly it was for audiences, right? That really worked.
Have either of you guys seen Must, the Ram Gopal Verma movie? I know I suggested that Beth watch it.
Not yet.
Urmila. But sounds like you've seen it, Amrita?
Yes.
That was a very interesting movie for me to watch because I didn't know a whole lot about Sridevi's personal life. And when I watched Must, I loved it. I went through a phase when I was obsessed with Urmila. This is back when I was in college, and I would watch all her films. I saw Dod, First Day First Show, for instance. I loved it. And when I saw Must, and then I read some interviews of Ramu about it, and then he talks about how Aftab Shivdasani's character in that is actually based on him, and he literally in Bombay, and he said to the rickshawala, I want to go to Sridevi's house or something. And Urmila's character is based on Sridevi, and I just found that whole movie entertaining, but also very sad at the same time, but also exploitative in a way that only Ramu can be. But also wondering how much of that is truth and how much of it is just made up.
Well, Ramu is incredibly creepy about Sridevi. It's amazing to me that one of the most storied careers in Indian cinema was born because of an adolescent crush, basically, that he's never gotten over. I've read, I've had the distinct displeasure of reading his memoir, and it literally is
Look at both of Beth and my faces right now. We're both like, there's a Ram Gopal Verma memoir. It's like,
yes, there is. Save yourselves. Don't do it.
We should read it, Beth.
No,
don't do it.
No problem. No, thank you. No way.
We're planning to read the Devanand autobiography, Amrita, just so you know.
Oh, that's like another one. But yeah, but at least Devanand has like, like aspirations to like literary whatever. Ramu just wants you to know that he's horny and like
Oh
all the
God.
time. And the way that he talks about his like I cannot imagine what it must have been like to be Sridevi and to just have this person just come into her house and just sort of like like slaver over her. It just sounds like the worst working condition that I can imagine. And I imagine that Ramu is the only person who is that honest about the
Mm,
way that he felt about her, because I imagine that was not an uncommon experience for Sridevi, because she
yeah.
really was like, she really was like a goddess. She was tall, in a time where like, like women really were petite, and she was just statuesque and tall and beautiful. And there's all these stories about her being sort of aloof and
Mm,
not very
Mysterious.
approachable in real life.
mm,
And I imagine that was a defense mechanism against like all the
Mm.
creepy men that she had to work with
mm,
and around from a very young age.
Mhm.
So I don't know how much of Must is true, but I bet it was built on industry gossip and like things that Ramu was her number one fan. So I'm sure like these are all like stories that he found out about her, and that's how he constructed it. Um, but yeah, it's kind of terrible.
Can you imagine going through life knowing that Ram Gopal Varma considers himself your number one fan? Like, oh,
What is
uh,
Ramu's autobiography called, by the way?
I do not remember. It's called
The
something
Stank
like
of
Guns.
Ramu.
No, it's called like Guns something and Sridevi or something like that. Like
What?
uh,
I need to look it up, but it's a really interesting title.
That is so weird. So Beth and I did like a little bit of like a filmy book club where we talked about Kulam Khulla on an episode, Rishi Kapoor's autobiography. And then recently we did the Kabir Vedi episode and I listened to his autobiography on audiobook. So we're always on the lookout for more autobiographies. And both of our libraries, our local libraries, refuse to carry the Devanand book. So I want to request it from Stanford University. They actually have it.
and my university
The
library is I believe, the third biggest university library in the United States, and we don't have it.
Right?
Wow.
I have to get it from
Um,
somewhere.
Ramu's book is called Guns and Thighs: The
Oh,
Story of My Life.
yes. Oh, yes.
That is so quintessentially Ramu, though. Like, I'm not even shocked. I'm
I mean,
horrified, but I'm not shocked.
he doesn't, as far as I can tell, he does not pretend to be something he's not.
True.
No.
And in a world that is very fake,
Yeah.
I do salute him in a weird way for that.
Yeah.
It
In a
doesn't
world
mean I want to be
populated by
around
Aloknaths.
it particularly, but he's not trying to fool anybody, I don't think.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Ugh.
not in the least. Not in the least.
And maybe he should have more of a filter or whatever, but
Yeah.
Ugh.
So for you guys, if I had to ask you to pick like your top three Sridevi performances, I'm not necessarily talking about top three Sridevi movies because
Ooh.
she's done some films that were kind of like but she's still great in them. Amrita, what would you pick as your top three Sri performances?
Oh my God, that's a tough one because there are so many. And I'll Sadma's gonna be in there, obviously, because
Mm.
it's like one of the great,
Mm,
and I'm just talking about the Hindi film ones. I'm not talking about
mm.
her work in like other industries. But Sadma for sure, Chalbaz for sure. Um, and who? I don't know. I want to say like Roop Ki Rani Choron Ka Raj for some reason. I feel like, like
Really?
like that, just for that song alone, like Dushman Dil Ka Jo Hai Mere, like,
Love
like
it.
that song in particular, like, like she just deserves everything for that. But
Mhm.
um yeah, I don't know, like Chandni is definitely up there, Mr. India is definitely up there. I don't know, like there's so many, so many.
What about you, Beth?
Yeah, Roop Ki Rani, which is a film that most people look at me funny when I say how much I love it, but I really do love it so much because it is so 70s and it's lovely to get to see her in a full-on 70s style, masala, uh, chalbaz, I would say. And then probably Judai,
Yeah.
which
Yay.
I just saw for the first time, Amrita, a couple months ago and was
Uh-huh.
absolutely enamored. What a great movie. I love everything about it.
I was literally, my cousin was here visiting, and we were literally referencing the scene from Judai where she has like all this cash on her bed, like all these notes on her bed. And Anil Kapoor comes to sleep, and she's like, "Can you go and sleep in the guest room? Because I have all this cash here." And she literally sleeps next to the cash, and she's so cute and adorable in it.
Love it.
Nice. I'm surprised neither of you said this movie, so I'm just gonna say it. I actually really like her in Nagina.
Yeah.
Of course, of course.
I mean, she is so phenomenal in this movie. And I know that like snake movies are like a whole genre and everything, but like her and Amrish Puri, actually, I would say that Amrish Puri is a performer of
Yes.
her caliber.
Yes.
That
Because,
is true. That is
Totally.
yeah,
very
so
true.
it may not have been the heroes who were of the same caliber,
Good
Sridevi, but
point.
Amrish Puri really could like bring it.
Because
Like
nobody's
Nagina
threatening
is
him.
no. I mean, Nagina is like this battle of wills between her and her one true enemy, Amrish Puri, and that goddamned
Yes.
bean in the middle. And
Yes.
no one can sell a fantastical, crazy character the way she can. And there's, of course, Rishi Kapoor playing the straight man in it, walking through the khandars like the posh Kapoor that he is in his sweaters and just wondering what's going on. But I think that would be one of my favorite, because I can't imagine anyone else doing that role the way she did it. Like only her, only she could have done that. I agree with Amrita on Chalbaz. Agree with you on Jadai. And then I also actually would say English to English.
Yes.
Um,
Oh yeah,
Such a
that's
late
really cute.
movie in her career. Was it her second last film? Because I think her last film was
Yes.
Mom, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Um,
In
and I
Hindi,
Oh, and
yes, but
Puli, right? She's in one
yeah,
of the
yeah,
post
the Tamil
Bahubali
one.
movies
Yeah,
as a
ah
queen, which
yeah,
okay.
I wanted
yes.
to watch that for her and then I never did. So clearly I
I
should.
believe it's pretty terrible, so you're
No.
not missing much. Yeah. She was
Beth has just
actually she was actually offered the role of Shivagami in Bahubali.
Really?
But apparently like Boni Kapoor asked for like a ridiculous amount of money, and then, like again, like, it doesn't matter if the men are in her movies or in real life, they're all just terrible. Like she deserved the world, and then, she just got these were her choices.
yeah. It's and yet in a weird way, I feel like when we speak about Sridevi, we don't necessarily speak about it with a sense of tragedy the way we do about someone like
Mm.
Mm.
Madhubala or some of the other actresses. And I wonder why that is, because Sridevi also died very, very young in very tragic circumstances and clearly did not have a happy childhood by any stretch of the imagination, and also was married to an ultra creepy weirdo. Um, and yet
I
I feel like there's, when people talk about Sridevi, including us, I feel like we speak about her with so much joy and just
Mm.
like we're so awed by her awesomeness. um
I think it has to do with the caliber of her work, but also
mm,
the amount of work that she did. When we're talking about Smita Patil or Madhubala, or like one of the other tragic, or Divya Bharati
Divya Bharati.
for that matter, these are women who appeared in like maybe like 20 to 30 movies at
Mm,
most. But with Sridevi, like there's something for every mood, there's something for every decade. there is like she was a star every single decade of her life.
Mhm.
Starting from like when she was like 3 years old, like that is insane. So for us, I think our parasocial relationship with her is really through her work more than anything
Mhm.
else. And she did a really good job of trying to keep her private life really private,
Mhm.
which is, it's funny because she had a really like as somebody who grew up in the public eye and in the time of like really vicious film journalism or like quote unquote journalism, um, there was a lot of gossip about her going back, to when she was really young. There were rumors about her relationship with Kamala Hassan, and that's sort of like people don't really know how to pin it. Were they like
Mm.
siblings or were they like boyfriend girlfriend? Like what was happening? Um, I think Kamala Hassan has always been like, she's like my sibling basically, but because they grew up together, like literally grew up together in front of
Mhm.
the camera. And then there was like talk about her and I can't remember if it was
Mithun,
with
right?
no, that was in Telugu. They were like talking about her with I can't remember if it was Chiranjeevi or if it was Venkatesh, but like there were like all these stories about like gossip about her.
Mm.
And then there was gossip about Mithun, whom she apparently married. And
Mhm.
then, somehow like Mithun, who was married at the time, was somehow the bichara, everybody's like, oh, poor Mithun. And I'm just like, but he's the one that was married. What do you mean poor
Mm.
Mithun? But anyway, so that was there. And then of course like Boni was like the big thing, like she got assaulted by Boni's ex-wife
Mhm.
and her mother while she was pregnant. Like, like these are
Mm.
like the stories of Bollywood history, basically. So all of that stuff, I can't remember what your question was, Pitu, and
Oh,
stuff.
my question was basically like for someone who met such a tragic end, I feel like people don't necessarily
Mhm.
speak about her with a sense of tragedy, as compared to others. But I think a lot of what you said, and I also think that there's a sense that with some of the other actresses like Madhubala or Smita Patil or Divya Bharati or whatever, you there's this sense of like Madhubala's, died after a really long, protracted illness, and apparently had a very unhappy relationship with Kishore Kumar, like her marriage, and then the fact that she could marry the love of her life, Dilip Kumar, and then with Divya Bharati, she was only 19 when she like fell to her death, and then with Smita Patil to die literally with a newborn baby at your side. I feel like there's a sense of like unfinished stories with them, whereas with Sridevi, I think people also saw her as like someone who had had a successful career, had chosen to withdraw from the camera, at least not act as actively as she could have. And she was like married, she had two daughters, she was married into the larger like Kapoor family. And it seemed to all purposes like she was like happy and content with her life and finally had some amount of agency in her life, perhaps.
Mm.
Is there any kind of role that you guys wish that Sridevi had done?
Oh gosh.
I would have loved to see if Shri could have had, like something to do in the new Malayalam film industry.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
like Malayalam cinema has always loved Sridevi. Like everybody is always like there's no thing of like, oh, she's a Telugu person or like, she works primarily in Hindi and therefore no, because she started working in Malayalam cinema as a child, I think, as well. She and Kamal Hassan, they used to come over and like work. And they've always loved her and they've always found ways to cast her in stories that centered her.
Hmm.
So I would have loved to see what they would have come up with for her in this decade.
Mm.
That would have been something.
Beth?
I have so many of the films she did make to see still that I feel like I've barely scratched the surface despite having seen 30 of her films, so I don't feel qualified to answer that question.
Okay.
But it is interesting that she, when we did our episode on Parveen Babi, you brought a film that came from parallel cinema, for example.
Mhm.
To my understanding, Sridevi doesn't have a whole lot of that, at least proportionally to her massive career. So, and there's probably good reasons for that, maybe she didn't want to. I can't imagine she wasn't asked, but,
Right.
um, but it would be interesting to see her, like, does she have a film with Nasser, for example? It would be amazing to see her opposite
Mhm.
Nasser Shah, right? Like, he would be worthy of her,
Nothing
probably.
comes to mind.
Yeah, I think if we could have seen her, well, I mean, we say this about like every actor that we love, but if we could see her in, say, like a Netflix original or something
Yeah.
in which she's just playing like a modern woman, having like something like Three of Us that came out last year, but with like
Shefali Shah.
Sridevi. Yeah. But if
Oh,
you had
yeah.
like a project like that with Sridevi, I can't imagine how great that would have been, you know.
Yeah.
And there's so many actors with whom I would have loved to see her. Like I would have liked to see her in a full-fledged role with Shah Rukh, for example. Like I know they
Yes.
have Ani,
Yes.
but I would really like to see the two of
Yeah.
them like in a modern film. Um,
Imagine.
I
Oh,
think I think she and Jaideep Ahlawat would have been like fire
Hmm.
on screen. Like that would have been amazing. Naseeruddin Shah, absolutely. There's just so many people that I would have loved to see her act against.
mhm.
I'd have liked to see her collaborate with some of my favorite parallel cinema directors, whether it's Shyam Benegal, Govind Nihalani, Jabbar Patel. Kind of makes me sad that she didn't really work with those. I also don't know how many women directors she's worked with. Obviously, Gauri Shinde, who did English Winglish
Mm,
with her. But I know this person is not parallel cinema, but I would have loved to see her do something with Zoya Akhtar. Can you imagine her in one of Zoya Akhtar's Goldfish,
yes.
movies that she makes where it's all these like rich entitled people and whatever? It would have been cool to see Sridevi play someone maybe uppity and just kind of like difficult and just very privileged, the way Zoya's movies tend to be just urban and privileged and stuff. So I think that would have been interesting.
I think that was the thing that made me really sad when she passed away, is that with English Winglish, she was able to show that, she could come out of that bombastic,
Mm.
mainstream in the, up to the 90s. That is a different style of filmmaking in which she made her bones. And with English Winglish, she was able to portray that, you know what? It's true, like I belong on the big screen and that I can show all of these things, but also I can make these very modern, very like small movies, so to speak,
Mm.
and just fit in effortlessly, even in there, And I remember watching that song, Navraji Mai.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Navraji
Navrai
Mai.
Maji.
Navrai Maji. Yeah, sorry. And Navrai Maji, like when she's dancing, and it's she can take that song over any
Mm.
moment that she wants, and she doesn't. She
Mm-hmm.
stays within the bounds of that character and that
Mm,
world, and it's clearly her song, but she's not like, she's not doing a Hawaii there. She's not
Yeah.
doing a albaz there. She's just doing what, that particular character would do. And that's why I think like it's a great shame that we didn't get to see more modern movies with her, because yeah, she would have been fabulous in something like Dil Dharakne Do or Kapoor
Mm-hmm.
and Sons or like any
mm.
of those films, like
Darlings, something like
she
that.
would have
Oh,
been
yeah.
perfect. Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Beth and I were just talking about Murder Mubarak. I don't know if you've seen it. And there's Karishma Kapoor in it, whom we were both very excited to see. And she had like a tiny, tiny role, but we enjoyed her. And later on, I was reading up on Reddit about Murder Mubarak, and multiple people had said, and this surprised me, but so I didn't agree with these people, but multiple people said that they felt like Karishma Kapoor is still stuck in the 90s with that same 90s OTT acting that she does. Like, most of Karishma's most famous movies are like, Raja Hindustani and stuff like that, where she's just like shrieking and being very like over the top. And they were like, the 90s have ended, but her acting is still stuck in that era, which I did not agree with. I thought she was fine. But that's an interesting point to make, because like you do see that with some of these actresses where it's like that their era is left behind, but they're still continuing to act in that way. And it's interesting that
Mm.
we did manage to like push that aside for like English and Mom, things like that, which also I think shows her versatility.
I have never seen her lost in the shuffle,
Uh-huh.
despite these, as you were saying, Amrita, bombastic movies that she was in. And I'm not sure I can say that about anyone,
Yeah.
man or woman, child, senior, hero, heroine, whatever. Never, ever have I seen her overwhelmed or
Yeah.
sort of standing there going like, what's going on? She's the the way she inhabits everything and knows exactly what to do at
It's her
every single
supreme.
moment she's on screen.
Yeah, her supreme confidence. I remember reading and or watching an interview of Saroj Khan's back in the day, and someone had asked her what it was like to choreograph Sridevi, and she said literally Sridevi was like the quietest person on the set, and she would tell Sridevi to do a step, and Sridevi would like look at Saroj Khan, copy the step exactly, and once in a while Sridevi would get it a little bit wrong. Like it's Sridevi, so it's just a little bit wrong, and Saroj Khan, being the perfectionist she was, she would literally say, Shri, ye kya kiya? And she would just say, okay, Master Ji, and she would do it perfectly the second time. And she said it
Mm.
was literally like you didn't have to choreograph this woman. You showed her what you had to do, and she would just do it. And I mean, this is not news to anyone that Sridevi is like a great dancer, obviously. But again, when I was rewatching Mr. India, I was struck by her in Kaate Nahi Katte, because every time I've seen that song, and I've seen it many, many times, it's always like, oh my God, she's so beautiful in that blue sari. It's so iconic. It's raining. She's just stunning. But what is really insane about that song is that there is no Anil Kapoor in that song visually, because he's Mr. India, so he's invisible. So she's writhing in the hay, and she's like acting like he's caressed her and acting like he's kissed her, and she's smooching someone that does not exist. She's essentially dancing with herself, and or with like a phantom. And I was just like, that's insane. You have no cues, you have no human being in front of you, and yet you're completely selling it. Like it could have
Mm.
looked so comical and ridiculous, but I was like, no, that's Mr. India right there. Like he did actually just like grab her wrist. And it's, you really have to see this song again, you guys, like with that lens of
Mm.
what a brilliant actor she was. Because I was like, how do you do that? How do you just do this dance pretending to be with another person who is actually not there? It's bonkers. The woman was a genius.
Yep, I can agree to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, do you guys have any parting comments on this inexhaustible topic that we're gonna have to wrap up soonish? Everyone's gobsmacked.
I mean, I don't want to wrap it up because I don't want to think of anything about Sridevi as being over. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I don't mean to be maudlin, but it's just not possible that she's gone. Um,
yeah.
and I am very glad to get to spend some time with you both talking about her because there really is nobody like her that I've ever encountered. And yeah, like you say, probably never will again. And we're lucky that we got to see. So we're all lucky that this is preserved on film for us
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
It was
Even
very
just the
shocking
joy. Oh my God.
when she passed away. Like, I remember
Yeah.
exactly where I was, and it's like I just woken up and the news reports were coming in from India, and I was like, what the hell? And my cousin had texted me and she was like, oh my God, did you just hear about Shri? And I was like, what about Shri? And then I Googled it, and it was unbelievable. 52 years old, and passed away in a bathtub in Dubai. And just a few days before that, there had been photos of her in the press because she was attending that wedding in Dubai, like a wedding in the larger, like Anil Kapoor, whatever, Surinder Kapoor family. And there were pictures of her in like a lehenga choli and like in a sari and everything. And it was just very like, it was a huge shocker. And I remember watching the funeral stuff that they showed on YouTube. There was like a stream that showed it, and it was really sad. I mean, you could see the grief. It was really sad.
I just had like the wildest thought. Deepika did a fantastic job in that role, but can you imagine if Sridevi had been the mother in Jawan?
Oh
You
yeah,
know, she
Oh,
had been
yeah.
so good in that
yeah,
role.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's a lot of what ifs, but also the things that she did leave behind, the work that she left
Mm-hmm.
behind. Yeah, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
I can't think of a single man who's been a superstar in India that has left behind that body of work.
yeah,
Um, and I don't think there will ever be anyone like that,
And
male or
one
female.
so full of joy
Yes.
yeah,
to watch. I think that maybe is, if I had to pick one thing that sets just one that sets her apart, maybe
mm,
it's that. And again, it's partly the roles that she was offered and chose to do, but there is just an ebullience and an energy and a joy to her that I think is, I forget what we were talking about, Chandni being kind of appealing to women. I bet that appeals too, right? Like to see, yeah, none of us will look like her, but the joy in just being yourself and dancing, no matter who's watching you or
yeah.
not, and maybe you're surrounded by idiots, but you can still find some joy in something, like she's unmatched at that, and that is so appealing.
Yeah. To me, the classic Sridevi moment is where it almost seems like she's breaking the fourth wall, but I don't
Yeah.
think she was. Is that dance in Chandni that she's done where she's wearing that white like Amrapali outfit or whatever, and it's just the instrumental by Shiv Hari, and it's in the
Yes.
mountains of Switzerland, and she's dancing, and then at the end of it, the flute just kind of, there's just some strings of the flute, and then she just like it just all simmers down because it's such a hectic frenetic dance, and then it just all sorts of simmers down, and then she just gives a quiet little smile, like just a little kitty cat smile, and it's just like,
Like
oh,
I
I
just nailed that
can't.
performance.
Yeah, it really is. It almost feels like, because there's this smug little, like tiny little
Yeah.
smile on her face, that I almost wonder if that was like,
Mm.
unintentional and it was just caught on camera. Because if it wasn't, then that's just insane then. But I almost wonder, but that to me is Sridevi. It's like this frenetic, crazy dance performance, and then it all just quiets down and she just shushes and just is hushed. And then she's just like a little kitty cat smile. Just darling. Do you have any parting thoughts, Amrita?
Just that I love her, and I'm glad that, we all got to witness her genius on the big screen.
Yeah, we're
Mm.
so happy that you joined us, because when we were like, because we do this like superstar series, and then we're like, Sridevi, yes, we need Amrita on here to like
Thank you
squeal with
so
us.
much. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, because
Of
like, yeah,
course.
you two are like two of my favorite people, and
Yay.
Sridevi is my favorite actress. So yeah, absolutely.
We're in
I
great company. We're all each other's favorite people, and Sridevi is one of our people. Ergo, we are all like Sridevi too. And she's here right next to Beth.
We need to do more episodes on some of her films, and we can bring Amrita and lots of other people
Yeah.
back to talk with us about
Yes.
these
Ideally,
particular
not
films.
Jitendra films, though, because then Amrita
No.
might unfriend us.
Yes.
I mean, somewhere out there,
Absolutely
there's a
not.
fan of those, but once we find them, maybe, but we promise Amrita it won't be you.
Yeah. We'll let Amrita pick the movie just to like
Yes,
safeguard our
yes,
friendship.
yes. It's only fair.
Okay, well, that wraps up this episode of Filmi Ladies. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And tell us what you think about Sridevi. Do you just love her? Do you think she's awesome? What do you love about her, and what are your favorite performances? Let us know. We are eager to hear. And we'll see you next week on another episode of Filmi Ladies. Thank you. Bye.